With this wealth of incriminating evidence against him, the net was closing in on Sutcliffe. And then, the hoaxer struck again.
I haven't written for about a year, to be exact.
I wasn't kidding last time I wrote, saying the whole would be older this time, and maybe I'd strike in Manchester for a change. You should have took heed.
Almost a year to the day since the last hoax letter, a third correspondence from Sunderland arrived, hand-addressed to Oldfield. This letter seemed to give a much more detailed insight into the mind of the Yorkshire Ripper.
Funny, the lady mentioned something about being in the same hospital before I stopped her whoring ways.
It was the third letter that arrived in early 1979 that really grabbed Oldfield's interest. It makes reference to the murder of a woman who'd been killed in the grounds of the Royal Infirmary, and she had been in that hospital for treatment. In the letter writer makes reference to, funny, she said something about being in hospital before I ended her whoring ways.
The lady won't worry about hospitals now, will she?
Quite crucial information which Oldfield believes only the killer could know.
Mr. Oldfield certainly thought it was him, but we took the view, everybody was on the view that he must be traced, with one senior officer's exception.
Why I wasn't so convinced from the word go is difficult to quantify.
Might write again, if up north. Jack the Ripper.
Rather peculiar, is it not, that a killer reviews his victim's background in such depth and then sends a letter to the investigating officer telling him something which he must already know.
Zachrisson's doubts would prove to be well-founded. It was the hoaxer who had been reviewing the Ripper victims' backgrounds, trawling through the countless newspaper articles about the murders and picking out details. It was this research, coupled with a few shrewd guesses about the Ripper's behavior, that made the hoaxer's letters so convincing. However, there was a detail that would have revealed that the letters were the work of a hoaxer from the very beginning. But Oldfield and Holland didn't even notice it. They bore one peculiar characteristic, taken from a 19th century hoax. Entire phrases had been copied from the original Jack the Ripper letters, faked in the 1880s. The Yorkshire Ripper hoaxer was fascinated by them.
When you examine the letters closely, you can see the similarity between words that the hoaxer was using and words that appeared in the original Jack the Ripper letters that had been sent to Scotland Yard in the 1880s.
One phrase in particular was, that bit about leather apron gave me real fits of laughter. Our present writer was saying, that photo in the paper gave me fits.
Despite being informed of this connection to the Victorian Ripper, West Yorkshire Police chose to disregard it, becoming convinced that the man writing to them had to be the real Yorkshire Ripper. By the summer of 1979, Sutcliffe had killed 10 women. Police had interviewed him a total of 9 times, and even taken a sample of his handwriting. But it hadn't matched that of the hoax letters, which the Ripper Squad now took to be written by their prime suspect. The letters had let Sutcliffe off the hook. But it was to be the hoaxer's next move that would push the police inquiry away from Sutcliffe completely. A move that would create one of the most infamous moments in British criminal history.
I'm Jack. I see you are still having no luck catching me.
I have the greatest respect for you, George, but Lord, you are no nearer catching me now than 4 years ago when I started.
The taunting voice on the tape spoke to George Oldfield directly. Oldfield never doubted for a moment that this was the voice of the Ripper, and took it as a personal challenge.
I reckon your boys are letting you down, George. They can't be much good, can they?
The first time I heard the tape, George Oldfield explained to us that this had to be taken seriously, and it could well be the voice of the killer.
I'm not quite sure when I'll strike again, but it will be definitely sometime this year.
Even if he was not the Ripper, he knew so much about it that he was going to lead us to who it was.
I was trying to think, have I interviewed anybody that's got the same voice as this? You know, listening to it very carefully and thinking, you know, is this anybody that I've questioned? And so we were trying to pick up any threads of, you know, the turn of expression or the tone of the voice, and it didn't seem to be disguised, the tone of the voice or the accent.
Well, it's been nice chatting to you, George. Yours, Jack the Ripper.
Hearing the Yorkshire Ripper with a northeast accent was not what the police had expected. This gave them an entirely new profile of the man they were seeking.
The letters and tape had been subjected to linguistic experts, and we chose the two foremost available in the north of England, Jack Windsor Lewis and Stanley Ellis.
This was an identifiable voice. There must be people all over the area who would know this man, his relatives and his neighbours.
They never learn, do they, George? I bet you've warned them, but they never listen.
Well, it's very, very carefully made. You know, he'd obviously written it out beforehand. You could guess that very confidently from the way he delivered it in chunks with long spaces between it.
The only time they came near catching me was a few months back in Chapeltown.
The guy in the tape tried to say, "Don't look for me in Sunderland." He was trying to pretend he had no connection with Sunderland because he was pretending to be the Yorkshire Ripper, you know, and he wanted to suggest that he came from Yorkshire. But, of course, his voice obviously showed that he had at least been brought up in Sunderland.
So I went to Sunderland, and we went from the mouth of the Wear on the north bank to pubs and clubs and various villages, working our way upstream. And when we got into Castletown, I spoke to people, and these were really the voice or the kind of pronunciation that I wanted to hear.
Directly as a result of this linguistic analysis, the Ripper Squad switched the focus of their investigation to the Castletown area of Wearside. Ironically, Peter Sutcliffe was at this same time eliminated from inquiries. As it now appeared, he had the wrong accent. And that is how Peter Sutcliffe, the real Yorkshire Ripper, was able to continue his killing spree, while the police launched a nationwide manhunt for the wrong person. By sending his spine-chilling tape to the police, the man who would come to be known as Wearside Jack had become an accomplice to murder. But it would take police another 25 years to track him down. It was the summer of 1979, and the hunt for the Yorkshire Ripper was at its height, when a cassette arrived at West Yorkshire Police HQ. It would change the entire focus of the investigation. The police went public.
I'm Jack. I see you are still having no luck catching me.
The flat Sunderland accented voice on the tape claimed to be the Yorkshire Ripper himself.
We know now that we are definitely looking for a man who originated in the northeast.
Journalists from all over the country had come to Leeds for the announcement, and the atmosphere inside that room was electric.
And I couldn't believe what I was hearing, because suddenly the monster was still faceless, but he had a voice.
See you soon. Bye. Hope you like the catchy tune at the end.
We got tremendous public response, and we were sure that when we gave the recordings of the voice, we were certain that we would get the perpetrator.
And anyone who missed the tape recording can now put a phone call in to Leeds 46911 and put the Yorkshire Ripper's voice on the line to them.
You are no nearer catching me now than 4 years ago when I started.
The influx of information was absolutely terrific. We had installed 10 incoming post office lines just to take information from the public. That worked, but the trouble with it was that by recording everything, quite a lot of dross and useless information and useless enquiries were logged.
In this pre-computer age, the information that the public appeal created overwhelmed the Ripper Squad.
Never before has there been a case of this nature and this enormity. You know, 500,000 nominal index cards has never been seen before or since. You know, and this has got to be placed very much in context with the era and the time.
They intercepted over 15 million letters coming out of the Sunderland area and screened thousands of voice samples. Hundreds of officers were dispatched to raid homes and social clubs across the north of England in search of a man whose voice matched the one on their recording.
I was working as a barman in a local club, and then this bunch of plainclothes detectives came in, set up a table on the stage, and they just played the tape. So, you know, it kind of reverberated around the concert room. It was packed, there was about 150 to 200 people in. And that stayed with me, that memory, because it was just so unusual.
You go to the cinema, and before the usual sort of da-da-da-da Pearl and Dean, the handwriting had come on the screen. The voice would be played.
The words, "I'm Jack," were instantly recognisable. That's all that people needed to hear to know that this was the voice of the Yorkshire Ripper.
And in a way, it gave women sort of false confidence. Because you felt, as long as you didn't bump into a guy who had that horrible, "I'm Jack," that deep, guttural, Wearside accent, then you were safe. And the answer was, of course, that you certainly were not.
In a heavily publicised campaign, the police were looking for the Ripper in Sunderland. Sutcliffe knew that the hunt was completely diverted away from him. It was a distraction that gave him fresh opportunity. Within 2 months of the nation hearing what they believed to be the Ripper's voice, the real Ripper savagely attacked a 20-year-old student, Barbara Leach.
She was attacked, hit on the head with a hammer, dragged down the alley, and she got the abdominal injuries, the head injuries, killed, and was left covered in old junk and carpets.
This latest murder, coupled with the hysteria created by the killer's supposed recording only a few weeks earlier, put the Yorkshire Ripper on the front pages of newspapers across the world. The killer was now attacking random members of the public. It seemed as if anyone could now fall victim.
Sutcliffe clearly had felt that this was some kind of brilliant piece of good luck for him, or, in his own words, divine inspiration. He became more daring, more driven after the tapes arrived.
In the next 12 months, Sutcliffe attacked 3 more women, killing 1 and seriously injuring 2.
I don't think there's any doubt that as a direct result of the hoax and the diversion of the enquiries, other women were attacked. I've got little doubt about that.
People were getting angry. They were saying, but you've got his handwriting. You know what he sounds like. Why can't you get him?
The police inquiry had disintegrated. The squad were drowning in paperwork, yet still had no likely new leads. Meanwhile, the Ripper was making a mockery of them, and pressure was coming directly from number 10 to solve the case.
Mrs. Thatcher was absolutely horrified that this case had dragged on for so long, and literally thumped the table, demanded to see the Home Secretary, Willie Whitelaw, and by all accounts was on the verge of going up to Leeds to sort it out herself.
A new strategy had to be developed, and although politicians can't direct police officers, they can obviously put tremendous political pressure on them. And of course this happens. The media put tremendous pressure on the officers concerned, and everybody has a